I was completely alone in the building, or so I thought. That's when we saw someone crouching in the dark, and he was covered in blood. He was blocking the door. And then I saw the knife. I was working for a cartel, and they just found out I spoke Spanish. It was too tall, its arms were too long, and it was already gone. Story 1. The Previous Owner's Warning. Horror narration. Sarah and Mike Chen thought they'd found their perfect starter home in Colorado Springs. The 1980s ranch-style house had good bones, a decent yard, and most importantly, it fit their budget as newlyweds. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Dorothy Hartwell, had lived there for 37 years before moving to assisted living. During the walkthrough, Dorothy seemed eager to leave quickly. She mentioned only one thing about the basement: good storage space. Then she hurried them along to the other rooms. The first week was blissful. They painted the walls, arranged furniture, and even hosted Sarah's parents for dinner. Mike, a software developer who worked from home, set up his office in the spare bedroom overlooking the backyard. Sarah, a nurse at Memorial Hospital, loved the short commute. Everything felt perfect until the day they decided to properly explore the basement. The basement was typical for a house that age: unfinished concrete walls, exposed ceiling beams, and a musty smell that spoke of decades. But along the far wall, they noticed something strange: a section of newer drywall. It looked hastily installed. Behind Mike's workbench, Sarah discovered a small cardboard box wedged between two support beams. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings, all about missing persons from the 1990s and early 2000s. Every article had been carefully cut out and organized by date. Mike dismissed it as Dorothy's morbid hobby, but Sarah felt uneasy. The clippings were preserved too carefully, too deliberately. That night, she searched the names online, and what she found made her stomach tighten. Every single missing person had last been seen in their neighborhood, or very close to it. 3 cases were still unsolved. One woman, Jennifer Walsh, had disappeared just 2 blocks away in 1998. The next morning, while Mike worked upstairs, Sarah heard something. Footsteps, slow footsteps, moving around in the basement. She called down, thinking Mike had gone downstairs, but his voice answered from his office upstairs. In the middle of a work call, the footsteps stopped instantly. Sarah stood at the basement door, listening. Minutes passed. Nothing. Later that afternoon, a neighbor named Mrs. Patterson stopped by. She brought a welcome casserole. During small talk, Sarah mentioned the newspaper clippings. Mrs. Patterson's expression changed immediately. She looked around nervously, then leaned closer and whispered. Dorothy had always been strange about those missing people. She used to walk the neighborhood at night with a flashlight. She said she was keeping watch. Neighbors had complained to police many times, but Dorothy had never technically done anything illegal. Then Mrs. Patterson said something that made Sarah's blood run cold. 3 different families had bought the house in the past decade. None stayed longer than 6 months. Each one left suddenly, and none of them would explain why. Every time, Dorothy bought the house back for less than it was worth, sometimes within weeks. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind kept returning to the drywall and the clippings. Around 2 a.m., she heard the footsteps again, but this time, something else. A dragging sound, like something heavy, being pulled across the concrete floor. She woke Mike. Together, they crept downstairs with flashlights. The basement looked empty, but near the new drywall, there were fresh scuff marks on the floor, marks that definitely hadn't been there before. The next day, they opened the wall. Using a crowbar, Mike pulled away a section of drywall. Behind it was a hidden cavity. Inside, another box, but this one was different. Driver's licenses, credit cards, personal belongings, all belonging to the missing people from the newspaper clippings. And at the bottom, a handwritten note, written in shaky, elderly handwriting. It said, "I couldn't stop watching, I couldn't stop collecting. Now it's your turn to keep their memory alive. The basement remembers everything." Sarah's hands trembled. She was holding Jennifer Walsh's driver's license. The photo showed a smiling young woman, missing since March 15th, 1998, Mike found a wedding ring engraved with the words "Forever Tom" and a college ID for someone named Marcus Chen, no relation to them, despite the same last name. They called the Colorado Springs police immediately. Detective Rodriguez arrived within an hour. He confirmed the belongings belonged to 3 cold cases: Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Chen, Rebecca Martinez. All had vanished without a trace, and the only thing connecting them was this neighborhood. Then Mike discovered something disturbing. The house had never actually been sold. Property records showed Dorothy had owned it since 1985. The sales had only been rental agreements, designed to look like purchases. Dorothy had always remained the legal owner. Mike called Detective Rodriguez again. The detective paused for a long moment. Then he said something chilling. Dorothy Hartwell had died 3 days ago. She suffered a stroke the morning after Sarah and Mike bought the house. She never regained consciousness, meaning she could not have been in the basement. That night, the sounds returned. Footsteps again, but this time there was tapping. Slow, rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking from inside the walls. Sarah and Mike sat awake in their bedroom, listening. The sounds continued until dawn. A week later, Detective Rodriguez called again. Dorothy's room in assisted living had been searched. They found journals, decades of them, filled with obsessive surveillance notes about the neighborhood, including every family that had lived in the house. The final entry was written the day before her stroke. It said, "New family in house, young couple, wife works nights sometimes. They'll find what I left. The basement will teach them to watch like I watched. Someone has to keep watching." Then came the final discovery: hidden surveillance equipment. Inside the basement walls, cameras, recorders, all transmitting to Dorothy's assisted living room. Until the moment she died, she had been watching them from her deathbed. Sarah and Mike moved out 1 month later, leaving behind their dream home and a mystery no one could explain. The house still stands today, empty, still owned by Dorothy Hartwell's estate, and according to neighbors, no one who moves in ever stays longer than the first night. Story 2. The Children's Playroom, 11 Labs horror narration script. When David and Amanda Torres bought their 2-story colonial in the Broadmoor area of Colorado Springs, they were thrilled. Finally, they had enough space for their twin daughters, Emma and Sophie. The girls were turning 6 next month. The house had been owned by the Brennan family for over 20 years, but everything changed after Mr. Brennan suddenly died from a heart attack. His wife, Mrs. Brennan, overwhelmed with grief and financial pressure, sold the house quickly and moved to Florida. One of the most exciting features of the house was the basement. The previous owners had converted it into a children's playroom. Colorful foam flooring, built-in toy shelves, and bright hand-painted murals of cartoon characters across the walls. Emma and Sophie loved it immediately. They spent hours down there, playing house and putting on puppet shows. David thought it was perfect, a place where the girls could laugh and shout without disturbing Amanda's work upstairs. For the first month, everything felt wonderful. The twins adapted to their new school, made new friends in the neighborhood, and treated the basement playroom like their own little kingdom. Amanda often worked late in the evenings, and she liked hearing the girls laughing downstairs while she finished client projects. The first sign that something was wrong came when Emma mentioned her new friend, a girl named Lucy. Emma said Lucy lived in the basement walls. Amanda laughed it off. Kids imagine things. But a few days later, Sophie said the same thing. Lucy only came out when the adults went upstairs. Soon, the twins were spending even more time in the basement. They had tea parties. They whispered. They laughed with someone Amanda couldn't see. One afternoon, Amanda was organizing toys downstairs. That's when she noticed something strange, a small door in the far wall. She had somehow missed it before. It blended perfectly into the mural, painted like part of a cartoon castle. The door was tiny, only about 3 feet high, clearly made for a child. Amanda opened it. Behind the door was a narrow crawl space, running beneath the foundation of the house. Inside, she found dozens of children's drawings. Every drawing showed the same little girl. Dark hair, sad eyes. Each picture was signed Lucy B. Some drawings showed Lucy playing alone. Others showed her hiding from tall, shadowy figures. But the most disturbing drawings showed Lucy lying on the ground, with X's over her eyes. At the back of the crawl space, Amanda found a small backpack. Inside were clothes, sized for a 6-year-old girl, and a school ID. The name on the card read, Lucy Brennan, dated 15 years earlier. Amanda's heart began to pound. Lucy Brennan would have been the same age as Emma and Sophie. She searched online and quickly found an obituary. Lucy Brennan, age 6, died in a tragic accident at home in 2009. That night, Amanda asked the twins about Lucy. Emma answered casually. Lucy was sad because she couldn't leave the basement and her parents didn't know she was still there. Sophie added something even stranger. Lucy had shown them the secret door and taught them games where they had to hide when adults came downstairs. Amanda decided to research the house further. The real estate agent reluctantly told her the truth. Lucy had died in the basement while playing alone. A section of the stone foundation collapsed, trapping her in the crawl space. Mr. Brennan later converted the basement into a playroom, painting over the repaired wall and installing the hidden door, a strange memorial for a lost child. But there was something else. Other families had lived in the house, only briefly. Parents always complained about their children, kids refusing to leave the basement, talking about Lucy, and behaving very strangely. That night, Amanda installed a baby monitor in the playroom. She wanted to hear what the girls were really doing. What she heard made her blood freeze. Emma and Sophie were talking, but it sounded like a conversation, like someone was answering them. Even though Amanda could only hear her daughter's voices, they whispered about hiding games, about secrets, and about the bad thing that happened. At one point, Sophie said something that chilled Amanda to the bone. "Lucy, why are your hands so cold?" Around midnight, Amanda heard footsteps on the basement stairs. Through the monitor, but both twins were asleep upstairs. Amanda slowly walked down to the basement. The playroom looked normal, except for one thing. All the toys were arranged in a perfect circle around the hidden door, as if someone had just finished a tea party. The next day, Amanda called Mrs. Brennan in Florida. When she mentioned Lucy's name, Mrs. Brennan began to cry, and then she told Amanda the truth. Lucy hadn't died in an accident, she had been murdered. Lucy's teenage brother, Michael, had severe mental illness. During a violent episode, he lured Lucy into the crawl space while playing hide and seek. Then he sealed the entrance with loose stones. Lucy was trapped there for 3 days before they found her. Michael claimed he forgot she was there, but his mother always believed he did it on purpose. The family told everyone it was an accident to avoid scandal and protect their son. Michael was later sent to a state hospital, but after Lucy died, Michael insisted she was still in the basement. He talked to her, played games with her, set up tea parties for 2, and drew pictures of her, just like the ones Amanda found. Mrs. Brennan eventually sealed the crawl space, but Michael never stopped saying Lucy lived in the walls until the day he died. 5 years ago, that evening, Emma and Sophie showed Amanda Lucy's games. The games involved hiding in small spaces, staying silent when parents called, pretending to be asleep. Sophie demonstrated how Lucy taught her to make herself very small by crawling into tight spaces and holding her breath until her lips turned blue. David realized something was terribly wrong when he found Emma behind the water heater, unconscious. She had been playing Lucy's sleeping game. She'd been stuck there for over an hour. When she woke up, Emma said Lucy had been with her, teaching her how to be quiet forever. Soon, they discovered something even worse. The twins had been sleepwalking every night, walking to the basement, climbing into the crawl space together, whispering to Lucy. Sophie had stopped eating. Lucy told her dead girls, "Don't need food." Emma refused to talk to adults. Lucy said grown-ups cause bad things. They hired a child psychologist, Dr. Sarah Martinez. After speaking with the twins, she made a disturbing conclusion. Someone had been manipulating them, teaching them these dangerous games, and convincing them it was Lucy. Police searched the basement. Inside the crawl space, they found evidence. Someone had been living there. Food wrappers, blankets, and journals. Detailed journals about the Torres family, their routines, and the twins. The journals were signed with 2 letters. M.B. Michael Brennan had not died in the state hospital. He had escaped 3 months before the Torres family moved in and had been living beneath the house, using the crawlspace network, watching the family, manipulating the twins, just like he once manipulated Lucy. By the time police tracked him down, Michael Brennan was already gone. He had moved on to another house, another basement playroom, and somewhere, another child was probably meeting Lucy. Story 3, The Collection Room, 11 Labs horror narration script. Marcus and Jenna Williams believed they had found something special, a beautiful Victorian house in Old Colorado City. Built in 1892, the house had been carefully restored by its previous owner, an antique dealer named Harold Voss. Harold had lived there alone for 30 years. When he suddenly died of a stroke, his estate was sold quickly, and the Williams family bought the house. They loved the historical charm, but what excited Marcus the most was the basement workshop. The basement had been Harold's pride, a perfectly climate-controlled space, custom shelves, bright work lights, and careful organization systems, the kind that serious collectors dream about. Harold had left behind vintage tools, antique furniture pieces, and dozens of labeled storage boxes. Most of his belongings had been sold during the estate sale, but the workshop equipment and several boxes of miscellaneous items remained. Marcus was thrilled. The tools were in perfect condition, and Harold had kept detailed restoration logs. Jenna, who worked as a museum curator, admired Harold's careful cataloguing. Their teenage son Tyler mostly avoided the basement, though he admitted it would be perfect for band practice someday. During the first month, the family slowly sorted through Harold's remaining boxes. Most contained ordinary things, old magazines, furniture repair parts, cleaning supplies. But Marcus noticed something strange. Harold had records of restoring hundreds of antique items, but almost no records of selling them. For someone who ran an antique business, he seemed to keep everything. The first disturbing discovery came from a locked cabinet. Marcus finally managed to open it. Inside were photo albums, but they weren't family photos, and they weren't furniture restoration pictures. They were surveillance photographs. Page after page showed people inside their homes, captured through windows or open doors, without their knowledge. The photos were dated and organized by location, going back more than 20 years. Marcus recognized several of the houses. They were all nearby. Neighbors, the Johnson family, the Martinez couple across the street, dozens of other families going about their daily lives, completely unaware they were being watched. The newest album showed something even more disturbing. Photos of their house, taken from outside, from different angles. Some pictures showed the previous tenants, who had lived there before Harold died. When Jenna saw the albums, she was horrified. They debated calling the police immediately, but first, they searched the rest of Harold's belongings. What they discovered next was far worse. Hidden behind a false wall, in the furthest corner of the basement, they found a secret room. This was Harold's real collection. The room was filled with personal belongings, women's jewelry, men's wallets, children's toys, family photographs, personal documents. None of them belonged to Harold. Each item had been carefully catalogued, with dates, addresses, and acquisition notes. Some entries said, estate sale, legitimate purchase. Others said, found discarded, but many simply read, collected during routine maintenance. Marcus slowly realized the truth. Harold had not just taken photographs. He had been entering people's homes and stealing small personal items for decades. His antique business had been a cover for burglary, but not ordinary burglary. Harold rarely took valuables. Instead, he stole sentimental objects, wedding rings, children's artwork, family Bibles, photo albums filled with memories. Then they discovered Harold's master journals, hidden inside a hollow furniture piece. Inside was something far more disturbing. Harold hadn't just been stealing things, he had been studying people, entire families. For years, he documented routines, relationships, secrets, fears, and vulnerabilities. The journals revealed something terrifying. Harold possessed keys to dozens of houses, keys he copied during service visits, when he posed as a handyman or antique appraiser. Sometimes, Harold entered homes while families slept, not to steal, but simply to observe. He photographed private documents, copied computer files, and rearranged small objects to see if anyone would notice. One journal entry described something especially chilling. Harold spent an entire night inside a family's house while they were on vacation. He slept in their guest room, ate their food, and wrote that he wanted to experience living their life for a while. In recent years, his behavior had escalated. Harold began leaving objects inside homes, items stolen from other families. He enjoyed the confusion it caused. He carefully recorded when families discovered these mysterious items. He was creating connections between strangers, moving pieces of their lives around, like some twisted experiment. But the most terrifying discovery was inside Harold's desk, a folder labeled Future Projects. Inside were detailed plans, surveillance reports, floor plans, and schedules for houses he had not yet entered, including their own home. Harold had gathered personal information about them: mortgage documents, Marcus's work schedule, Tyler's school timetable, even Jenna's private medical records. Harold's final journal entries were written just days before his death. They revealed his ultimate plan. He had grown bored with stealing. His next goal was far more disturbing. He planned to replace a family's belongings, piece by piece, with objects from other families, slowly, quietly, until the family no longer recognized their own lives. He wanted to see how long it would take before they realized their memories had been replaced. The Williams family called the police immediately. Detective Susan Chen arrived with a full forensic team. What they uncovered became one of the largest burglary investigations in Colorado Springs history. Harold's collection contained evidence from over 200 break-ins, spanning 3 decades. Many victims never knew they had been robbed because Harold usually stole only one small item, something people assumed they had simply misplaced. But the investigation revealed something even darker. Harold had been drugging some victims. Sedatives were found in hair samples, meaning he had slipped drugs into food or drinks. During some home invasions, families had reported strange sleep, memory gaps, moments they could not explain. Now the truth made horrifying sense. Police also discovered hidden surveillance devices inside multiple homes. Some had been recording private moments for years, bedroom conversations, family arguments, intimate dinners, all documented in Harold's basement. But the most horrifying discovery came from Tyler. While clearing the basement, he triggered a hidden panel. Behind it was Harold's trophy room. Inside were the most personal items: wedding photos, children's drawings, love letters, family videos, displayed like museum exhibits, each accompanied by psychological notes about the families they came from, their fears, their weaknesses, their secrets. Harold had built psychological profiles that could destroy lives, reveal affairs, ruin marriages, expose private truths. Detective Chen later discovered Harold's final plan. He wanted to merge 3 families by secretly moving their belongings between homes while they slept until they woke up, living completely different lives. With no idea how it happened, Harold died before he could carry out the experiment. The Williams family moved out long before the investigation ended. They could never feel safe there again. The house remained empty for 2 years until new owners finally purchased it. They completely destroyed the basement and had the house blessed by 3 religious leaders before moving in. Harold's stolen belongings were returned to as many families as possible. But many items had no owners, fragments of lives that could never be restored. Those remaining objects were buried together in a ceremony attended by the entire neighborhood, finally putting Harold's collection to rest. Story 4, The Whispering Fields of Marfa, Texas. 11 Labs horror narration script. Marfa, Texas is a small town of barely 1,700 people. It's famous for the mysterious Marfa lights, a phenomenon that has puzzled scientists, UFO enthusiasts, and travelers for more than a century. But beneath the town's strange reputation and artistic charm, there is something darker, something most locals refuse to speak about. And when journalist Rachel Chen arrived from Austin to write a feature story on Marfa's cultural renaissance, she had no idea she was walking into something far worse than lights in the sky. Rachel rented a converted barn on the outskirts of town. The landlord, a man named Tom Garrett, seemed unusually eager to get her settled in quickly. The property was isolated, surrounded by vast desert scrubland stretching toward the horizon, abandoned ranch buildings, weathered fence posts, empty land in every direction. Tom warned her not to go into the surrounding fields after dark. He claimed there were sinkholes, coyotes, but Rachel could tell that wasn't the real reason. There was something else, something he wasn't saying. On her first night, Rachel heard sounds across the empty fields. Not coyotes, not the wind, children's voices, singing, softly, like a nursery rhyme, but in a language she couldn't recognize. The voices drifted with the breeze, sometimes close, sometimes far away. The next morning, Rachel checked the property line carefully. No footprints, no nearby houses, no sign that anyone else lived out there. When she mentioned it to Tom, he dismissed it, said it was probably her imagination, just the effect of sleeping in an unfamiliar place. Rachel began interviewing local residents, and almost immediately, she noticed a pattern. Whenever she asked about disappearances or missing persons, people became uncomfortable, evasive, silent. Official records showed nothing unusual, but older residents made strange comments. The fields take their due. What the land demands must be given. One woman, Mrs. Elena Vasquez, pulled Rachel aside in a diner and whispered, "Don't stay out there alone. The fields know you don't belong, and they're always hungry for newcomers." That night, Rachel researched Marfa's real history. What she found was deeply disturbing. The town had been built on land taken from the Comanche and Apache, land they had used for centuries. According to archaeological records and native oral history, the Marfa region had once been a sacred burial ground, a place of ritual, a place of death. It had also seen brutal massacres, white settlers, indigenous people, entire groups killed in violence so horrific it stained the land itself. Then Rachel uncovered something even worse: records of the Marfa State Hospital, a psychiatric institution that operated from 1887 to 1963. It had been built directly over what anthropologists believed was a major Comanche burial site. During its 76 years of operation, the hospital had a death rate far beyond normal. Official records blamed disease, suicide, but old newspaper archives told another story. There were references to unexplained patient disappearances, mysterious deaths that defied medical explanation. One newspaper from 1923 described an incident where 12 psychiatric patients vanished from a locked ward in a single night. They were never found. Search teams combed the area. Nothing. Another article from 1947 reported staff finding patients wandering the nearby fields, in trance-like states, repeating one phrase again and again. "The fields are singing. The fields are singing." Rachel filed a FOIA request and obtained hospital documents. What she found inside was chilling. The hospital's first director, Dr. Marcus Blackwood, had been conducting experiments on patients. He called it tribal regression therapy. Blackwood believed mental illness could be cured by forcing patients to participate in reconstructed native rituals. But he had not learned these practices respectfully. He had twisted them, perverted them. He interrogated Comanche elders, then turned sacred ceremonies into grotesque imitations. His patients were taken into the fields at night, forced to participate in fabricated rituals, a sick blend of Christian theology and corrupted tribal practice. Blackwood claimed this would connect them to primordial consciousness. Instead, the patients suffered breakdowns, violent episodes, and many of the disappearances recorded in those old newspaper stories. Rachel later found Blackwood's journals stored in the University of Texas archives, and in those journals, she discovered his real purpose. He believed the land itself was conscious, alive, aware. He believed psychiatric patients, because of their unstable mental state, were more vulnerable to communication with whatever inhabited the Marfa fields. Blackwood was not trying to heal anyone. He was trying to use broken minds as conduits to speak with the thing inside the land. The most disturbing journal entries described his successes. Patients who claimed they could hear the field's intentions. Patients who said the voices gave them instructions. These people would walk into the fields at night and vanish. Blackwood believed they had been absorbed, taken into the field's consciousness, merged with it. On Rachel's third night in the barn, the singing returned. But now it had changed. The children's voices were speaking English, and they weren't singing random words. They were singing about her, facts from Rachel's own life, details from her medical records, memories from childhood, private conversations with her therapist, things nobody should have known, and yet the voices sang them like a nursery rhyme across the dark fields. Rachel drove into town in a panic. She confronted Tom Garrett, demanded the truth. This time, Tom finally broke. He confessed that the real reason he warned her away from the fields had nothing to do with coyotes or sinkholes. It was because of what the land did to people. Tom explained that Marfa had learned to coexist with the town as long as people followed certain rules. Never go into the fields after dark, never stay too long if you're new, and never, ever try to leave the region once the fields begin singing to you. Tom then admitted something even more terrifying. He had tried to leave Marfa 15 years earlier. Every time he drove toward the town limits, his car stalled. Every time. And when he returned to town, it worked again. He had accepted it. Now he spent his life managing rental properties for outsiders, watching them come, watching them hear the singing, watching them flee, if they still could. Rachel demanded Tom take her to the old hospital grounds. At first he refused, terrified. But when Rachel threatened to go alone, he reluctantly agreed. They drove through the darkness to the ruins of Marfa State Hospital. The buildings were mostly demolished. What remained were cracked brick walls, shattered windows, and overgrown grounds. That seemed to swallow the light of their flashlights. Tom warned her not to go inside, only to stay near the edge. But as they walked the perimeter, Rachel began to see things. Figures, moving among the ruins, shadowy shapes, and what looked like patients, wandering in hospital gowns. When she pointed them out, Tom went pale, grabbed her arm, told her they had to leave, but it was already too late. The figures had seen them. What happened next defied explanation. The figures began moving toward them, faster and faster. Their movements became wrong, no longer human, fluid, jerking, like puppets pulled by something unseen. Their mouths opened impossibly wide, and the singing began again, the same nursery rhyme, but this time it came from everywhere, not from their mouths, from the ground itself, from the earth, from beneath Rachel's feet. Rachel and Tom ran back to the car, but when they reached it, they realized they were surrounded. The fields were moving. The ground itself rippled in waves, as if the earth were breathing. Tom's hands shook so violently, he could barely fit the key into the ignition. When the engine finally turned over, he drove straight through the perimeter fence, smashing through it to escape. They made it back to town, but Rachel knew something had changed. The singing didn't stay behind in the fields. She could hear it everywhere now, in the wind, in power lines, in her heartbeat. Tom drove her to the police station. There, they met Officer David Martinez. He listened to everything with the tired expression of a man who had heard this story before. Officer Martinez revealed he had been investigating what he called the Marfa phenomenon for 5 years. He showed Rachel files, at least 30 missing persons cases, dating back to the 1980s. Every one of them new to the area or just passing through, and every one of them had reported hearing children singing in the fields before they vanished. Officially, the cases were marked as voluntary disappearances, runaways, but Martinez didn't believe that. He believed something else was taking people. He had spoken to paranormal researchers, native spiritual leaders, even the FBI. No one had a satisfying answer, except one person, Dr. Yolanda Gutierrez, an anthropologist who had studied the Marfa region for years. Her theory was horrifying. She believed the fields were built over layers of burial sites and massacre grounds where thousands had died violently. The Comanche and Apache believed places like that could become spiritually corrupted, not haunted in the ordinary sense, but awakened, hungry, not intelligent like a human, but aware, a place that fed on memory, on life, on trauma. They had a name for such places, the thin places where the dead don't rest. What made Marfa even more dangerous was Blackwood, his twisted experiments, his forced rituals, his use of vulnerable psychiatric patients. According to Dr. Gutierrez, Blackwood had fed the field directly, teaching it how to communicate, training it to reach into human minds. The missing patients had not simply vanished. They had been absorbed, their consciousness merged into the field itself. Officer Martinez then revealed the most horrifying discovery of all. The missing people from recent decades had never actually left the area. Ground-penetrating radar and soil analysis showed something impossible. The composition of the earth had changed. The soil now contained mineral traces matching human remains, as if the bodies had not been buried in the fields, but absorbed by them. Rachel tried to leave Marfa that night. Her car wouldn't start. The next morning, she tried again. Nothing. Tom drove her to the bus station. She boarded a Greyhound, heading east, towards safety, towards civilization. But at the town limits, the engine died. The driver couldn't restart it. He just looked tired, turned the bus around, and drove Rachel back into Marfa. Now the singing was constant. Inside the barn, in the shower water, in the mirror, in her own reflection, and the voices were changing. They were no longer just reciting facts about her life. They were giving her memories that were not hers. She felt the deaths of psychiatric patients from the 1930s, the terror of indigenous people slaughtered on the same soil, the despair of those consumed by the field's hunger. Rachel was not just hearing the dead, she was becoming part of what they remembered. She contacted Dr. Gutierrez and was told there were only 2 outcomes. Once the fields began singing to you, you either tried to flee and were dragged back until you broke, or you accepted the field's presence and attempted to negotiate with it. Dr. Gutierrez had been researching a third possibility, a cleansing ritual, based on Comanche spiritual practices, a ceremony that might free the trapped souls. But it came at a cost. Rachel would have to participate willingly, and doing so might trap her consciousness forever. Dr. Gutierrez explained that the trapped souls existed in limbo, reliving their deaths over and over. The ritual might release them, but it required someone still alive to anchor themselves to the field, to guide the dead toward peace. Rachel made her choice. She would do it. On the night of the new moon, Rachel, Dr. Gutierrez, and a Comanche elder named Robert Whitehorse went into the heart of the Marfa fields. They carried sacred objects, ceremonial herbs. They formed a circle and began chanting in Comanche, trying to reach the presence inside the land. What emerged was beyond anything they imagined. The field's consciousness manifested as a vortex of pure psychological force, not evil, not exactly, just vast, alien, ancient, It flooded Rachel's mind with every death that had happened on that land. Centuries of pain, centuries of fear, centuries of horror. The thing did not want to kill her. It wanted to consume her, to add her awareness to its collective intelligence. In those final moments, as her mind began slipping away, Rachel made one last decision. She used everything she knew as a journalist, every instinct to observe, to document, to remember. She created a mental record of what the field truly was, and then, instead of resisting, she allowed herself to be taken, but not helplessly, not passively. She merged with it, while holding on to herself, becoming part of its awareness, without losing her identity. What happened next shocked everyone present. The singing stopped, the shadowy figures disappeared, and Rachel stood up. But she was no longer entirely Rachel. Her eyes had changed. They reflected something ancient, something vast. And when she spoke, her voice carried strange harmonics, like the earth itself was speaking through her. Rachel explained that she could now feel the trapped souls, all 30 from recent decades, and thousands more from centuries past. They were caught in loops of death, unable to move on, but now she could guide them. Over the following weeks, Rachel performed ceremony after ceremony. Each time, another trapped soul was released. Each time, the singing grew quieter, the hunger of the fields weakened, but Rachel was changing, becoming less human. With every soul she freed, after the final ceremony, all the trapped consciousness had been released. Rachel remained alive, but not fully human anymore. Her body stayed in Marfa, but her awareness was permanently bound to the field. She could still think, still speak, but she now existed between states, between life and death, between human mind and something beyond it. Officer Martinez witnessed the final transformation. Rachel walked into the fields at sunset, then stopped, completely still. She no longer moved, but her voice still drifted across the land, carried on the wind. She said someone had to remain, to make sure the field never grew hungry again, to make sure it never sang to another victim. Rachel became Marfa's eternal guardian, a consciousness bound to the land, watching, warning. Tom Garrett and Officer Martinez were the only people who knew the truth. They made sure no outsider stayed long, and anyone who heard the singing was forced to leave immediately. The Marfa lights, the strange glowing orbs tourists came to see, some locals began to believe, were Rachel, still there, still watching, still present in the fields. Her apartment in Austin remained empty. Her news organization never learned what happened. To the world, Rachel Chen simply disappeared. But in Marfa, on quiet nights, people sometimes hear a woman's voice drifting across the desert. Not the old nursery rhyme, not the voices of hungry children, but a gentle lullaby, soft, beautiful, as if Rachel is singing the land to sleep, keeping it calm, keeping it from waking hungry again. The Marfa fields are quiet now, but locals know something is still there, watching, waiting, and if new voices ever begin singing in the darkness, it will be Rachel, forever trapped between worlds, making sure the fields never consume another soul.